Hey, welcome to Reason for Truth. I'm your host, Stevie Garofalo. I want to talk to you a little bit about my thoughts on Ukraine. A lot of people are asking me, Steve, what do you think is going on here? So I want to share a little bit, again, just off the top of my heart and mind, of things I'm hearing, because I tend to get different perspectives. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, is what is going on in Ukraine. Welcome to Reason for Truth. I'm your host, Stevie Garofalo. Reason for Truth, where the truth comes first and the reasons come last, but where you know we're always and constantly learning, because when we stop learning, we stop teaching, or at least stop teaching well. You know, in today's world, we've got a lot of unsettledness. We just got talking about a little bit about nomads. We've been in a series on nomads, digital nomads. A lot of people are looking, hey, what do I do? Nomads could be, I have friends, literally a lot of friends that are buying great swaths of land, going to live out in the country. Other people I know are literally living in South America on a farm or living in a condo somewhere. This is a big deal and it's a real thing. So don't think it's not. If you haven't, just go ahead and Google digital nomads. But that's a subject differently for today. I want to talk about Ukraine because this is a serious subject. And in what we see is, and I know digital nomad ties into it, I think, because a lot of people are asking what is going on in the world. I wanted to share you what I see is going on. I see Ukraine as much bigger picture. I see a number of things going on there. A lot of people say it's Putin. He wants to just make he wants to make the USSR back into Russia, into this magnificent country. And I would say there's some truth to that, but I'm not certain that's the main point of what Russia's doing. You know, I listened to a guy named Steve Turley. You want to check him out on Rumble. He did a great piece, and he's been doing a number of follow-ups, and he's talking about, and he's Eastern Orthodox, but he points out, you know, Eastern Orthodoxy is the main Christian sect, or, that's over in Russia. They are Eastern Orthodox, and also getting into Ukraine. Ukraine's the biggest country in Europe, so it's an important country, and listen, this is a debacle what's been allowed to happen. But in the end, I want to give you a couple perspectives that Steve Turley gave, and I think they're worth looking at. Number one, in the United States, what happens if someone went to put missiles as they tried to do in Cuba? Well, we wouldn't like that. We didn't let it happen. And I think that's part of the equation, not the whole equation, that Russia's, moving to extinguish. The whole concept or spirit of winning, right, is just to get your opponent to where you get him in a corner and we put all our missiles on their border, but we're not allowed on our border. Now, I think in some countries that's warranted. I'm not certain that Russia falls into that category. The problem is if you don't make things equitable and you don't give any space for neutrality, you end up with anger. And when people, kind of like digital nomads, when they feel like they're captured in an audience, in an office somewhere rather, they want to break out of that place. And I don't think Russia wants missiles on their border. So I want you to give you some thought, good, bad, or ugly. That's a fact. Look at it from that perspective. The other is interesting. Steve Turley, looks into is this whole globalization. He sees the establishment, the global elites is falling apart. I think he's right. People are tired. Listen, Italian people want to be Italian. They like their religion. Even in India, there's a whole resurgence back to the Hindu religion. And people are getting more serious about their faith. I think, when tough times get tough, people do that. And I think people don't really want this globalization of everything. Doesn't mean we can't enjoy one another, even as global citizens from perspective of being a nomad. There's nothing wrong with that. And but I'm just telling you what I see going on, and I agree with Steve on those, Dr. Turley, on those points. There's a lot of other points, too. I mean, you got a lot of aggression. You got people killed. You have people hurt. You could then take it from the perspective of, it's sad when you see damage and death happen when it could have been averted. I mean, that's pretty sad. And I'm talking about rightfully averted. Some people say, well, if you don't do X, then Y is going to happen to you. But listen, at the end of the day, there's certain things like Ukraine was perfectly could have been completely averted in the first place. But that's, I would chalk that up to poor leadership, both in the different parts of the world, including the United States. Anyways, having said that, I want to say this. A lot of Christians are asking, do you think it's the end of the world? I would say that, Christ is coming back. Are we living through the millennia? I get all those. Well, I'm a pre-rapture guy, so I sleep well on that note. Secondly, what do I see? Number one, the United States of America is not the centerpiece for the whole world. Now, we have been the centerpiece of Christianity. Yes, talking to a friend of mine who's been a missionary for years all over the world. So he gives a pretty good perspective, and I respect it. He goes, United States is the centerpiece. And I would submit that's because he's anchored so deeply on the reliance in the United States of America, not only financially, but just as the country that's upheld Christianity. But I would say there's a different perspective, perhaps because Christianity has ceased to be salt and light in the United States of America, and be honest with you, a lot of countries I'm hearing all over the world, because we've failed to do that. That's what's given way to this global elitism. People just, hey, listen, as long as I make money and I can buy cheap stuff, I'm happy. Let's just run with it. But you see, that has a limited kind of life cycle on it, because after a while, you know what happens? People with much get more, and then people with have some get less. That's what's happening in the world. But, I would say that in the bigger picture, though, is when we are disobedient to God, what happens? God passes judgment. God's judgment, as you could see in the Old Testament, is not always just Sodom and Gomorrah and Noah flooding the land. Those are big deals. More often than not, it's more like it's more like the book of Judges, or, you look at David being chased by Saul. It's when God lifts his hand of blessing off you, is on a nation or a person, it's because of their lack of faithfulness and their moral decline. And in the West, that is a fact, Jack. I already wrote a book about it in 2013, which was almost 9 years ago. Right for you, but not for me, a response to moral relativism. No matter where at around the world, you can get that on every continent in the world, certainly digitally, and in most places you can get it in paper. I want to encourage you to go ahead and check that out on Amazon. You could also get that on equippedacademy.com. Now, at least within the United States. Having said that, I think that the moral decline in the West, in light of affluence and opulence and easiness and the desire to have everything quickly on YouTube and to have everything in your basket from Amazon in 2 hours or 1 day or 2 days, has kind of ruined us. It's our attention span is ruined. Our moral baseline is ruined. And I think that's what's going on. As a response, I think God is shaking things up. You ask me, that's my opinion. But I do think that if Christ doesn't return, which he's going to return, the question is when, but if he doesn't in our lifetime, perhaps God will raise up another country to be a great Christian nation, and it probably will be a nation you never suspect. You've heard me say that before, but it could be one of our adversaries that ends up being the great Christian nation. I think what's interesting about Russia is they don't want the moral decline, and that was coming through what's going on in Ukraine. It was right up on their border. That was another reason Steve Turley points out to that, Dr. Turley. He points to the fact that whole woke agenda was on its way. It was right into almost on the tips of Russia, and Russia doesn't play that. So I think we got a lot of things going on here. My heart goes out for the Ukraine people. I really do. And that is sad. We need to be prayerfully stand with them. Problem is leadership answering Russia is non-existent or intentionally or non-intentionally not doing anything real. They offered to President Biden offered to the president to evacuate him, bring him to the United States, and his response was, we need bullets, not an airplane ride. That was his words. I may be paraphrasing or off just a little bit, but it's interesting how you listen. He's saying we need our country. We don't need to just evacuate. Anyways, you asked me what's going on in Ukraine. I think we need to be praying for them. We need to be praying for all the countries, for the West, for the President of the United States, all our congressmen and senators, our Supreme Court, that they make rightful, godly decisions. Because if we, in the West and all over Europe and different countries around the world, if we continue to disobey God, you're going to see more events like Ukraine happening, and it might get encroaching a little bit more closer to our home. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a fact, Jack. Take it to the bank, and then time will tell. Listen, I appreciate you tuning in. I hope I've answered the question, at least in a general sense. I always like to say not only what is going on, but what could happen. I think that God could turn things around if we repent, even as a nation and as nations, as continents and as God's people. He's going to restore us. That's the good news. It's up to us. It's up to you. It's up to me. Appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you do a couple things. Number one, make sure you know what I say. Well, make sure you subscribe and smash that alert bell. I'll come back to that in a minute. You want to check out reasonfortruth.org, reasonfortruth.bible. They both go to the same places. And we do, if you want to support us and what we do here, we'd really appreciate that. You can hit the little donate button up there, and it's tax deductible. We really greatly appreciate it. It takes a lot of time and effort to do what we do. And for those who support us, thank you very much. Couldn't do it without you. So in the end, you want to make sure you smash that subscribe button and then go ahead and Gancio Sinistro. That's a left hook, boom, to that alert bell down there below. Or if you're German, just tickle the clock. Anyways, God's blessings to you. Thank you for tuning in and hearing me. If you have any questions you'd like addressed on Ukraine or otherwise, leave them in the comments below. I'm your host, Stevie Garofalo, and this is your Reason for Truth for today.